All right, welcome to those of you who just joined. We're so excited to have a great group of people here. We're going to be talking about navigating decision plans and deadlines today. I'm so excited to be joined by Lauren, who is our Director of College Advising, and Erika, who is one of our long-tenured college advisors here at Logic Prep, to talk a little bit with you guys about decision plans and how they work and answer all of your questions about that area. So I'm going to leave it to them to take it away and discuss everything that we're going to talk about today. Please keep in mind that we have the Q&A open in today's session. So if you have questions at any point throughout the presentation, please put them in the Q&A. We are going to leave some time at the end to address as many questions as we can. And we look forward to getting some answers to you. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Lauren Lynch. I'm the Director of College Advising here at Logic Prep. So happy to see so many people joining us this evening. I have over 20 years of experience in the field. I've been working with thousands of students over the last number of years. I worked in admissions at Williams College, as well as working in various college consulting capacities over the last few years.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erika, a college advisor here at Logic Prep. I've been here for about 4 years now, and I've been in college admission for over 10 years. I worked at Wellesley College and Colorado College, got my master's degree at Harvard, and also was director of college counseling at a private boarding school in New England before joining Logic Prep. So I'm excited to be here tonight.
Just want to give you a little orientation to how we are going to do our presentation tonight. As Olivia said, we are obviously going to talk through some points and issues we want to make you aware of. We are going to leave as much time as possible for questions towards the end. What we really want to focus on this evening is what are the decision plans and deadlines? What are the potential outcomes after you've submitted applications under any of those policies? And what is the strategy behind early decision, early action, regular decision? In other words, how do you know what best suits you as the individual applicant? And what is the best option for yielding the best outcome?
So the first decision plan that we're going to talk about tonight is early decision. As the name implies, with early decision, you need to decide on one school, usually your top choice school, that you want to apply for early decision, because this is a binding decision plan. What binding means is that if you are admitted early decision, you are bound to attend that school. The application deadline for early decision round 1 is in early November, and students hear back from that ED1 choice by mid-December. Not all schools offer early decision, so do look at your college list and speak with your college advisor to see where it could be an option for you. What is appealing about early decision is that it's the least selective decision plan, meaning that universities that offer early decision are usually a little bit kinder to applicants, since they see how excited those students are to come to their university because of the binding nature and because it's the first look at the applicant pool for that year. What's also really important to note, due to the binding nature of early decision, is that if you are admitted ED, you have to withdraw your applications to other universities. And so as you enter into early decision, you do have to be mindful of that and be comfortable saying to yourself, yes, if I am admitted to this place, I want to go, and I'm totally fine withdrawing my applications everywhere else. As you can see on the screen here, there are 2 options for early decision. The first one that I just mentioned is the deadline is in early November, but there's also a second one, ED2. The deadline for that is in early January. It works exactly the same as early decision round 1, although it's offered at even fewer places. So again, double check the colleges on your list. After applying in early January for ED2, you would hear back by mid-February. And similarly, you would have to withdraw all of your outstanding applications at that time.
Just want to say a couple things before we move on to the next slide. And I should have said this in the introduction. One of our goals in presenting the session tonight is to partially help demystify this process. As Erika said, not every school offers early decision. Not every school that offers early decision offers early decision too. Not every school offers early action. It's a very confusing landscape. It takes a lot of knowledge and experience to keep up with it. So definitely, if you are feeling confused and overwhelmed, you are not alone in this. It's very hard to get a grasp of which schools offer which options, and that's something your college advisor is going to work very closely with you on. One other kind of commentary about early decision is that if you are applying to a school early decision, and you also have schools with early action or early deadlines, you should absolutely submit those applications. You don't hold off on submitting them. But if you are admitted to your early decision school, at that point, you do need to withdraw them.
Thanks, Lauren. My final point here about early decision is sometimes people compare it to making a marriage proposal. That's why there's this graphic up here on the screen with the ring. The reason for that being is since it is a binding decision plan, again, you can only choose one school for early decision round 1. And if you are applying early decision round 2, you can choose a second school at that time. So again, you just have to be really intentional with which school you choose. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
In addition to early decision, some colleges offer early action. And at some universities, that might be called priority deadlines, where, again, as with early decision, the expectation, the requirement is that you are submitting your application in early November. Decisions are released in that same time frame, kind of mid to late December. The difference between early action and early decision is that early action is not binding. What that means is that you are admitted early action, you have until the deposit date of May 1st to make your final determination about which college you would like to attend. Early action is a great option for those of you who feel that your applications are in great shape and you're pretty certain about the schools that you might be interested in attending. It allows you to get feedback early on in the process about your acceptance status, which can take a lot of the stress off of this process, knowing that you have an option already. So it's really a great choice to make if your application is ready for submission by those early action deadlines. The only caveat to that is that some of the universities, primarily the Yale, Stanford, have what's called restrictive early action. What that means is that if you are applying to any of these restrictive early action schools, you may not apply early decision, you may not apply to any other private institutions early on in the process. You are allowed to apply to public universities, University of Michigan, University of Wisconsin, UC system, but you are not allowed to apply early decision to any other school or early action to any other school. If you are not admitted, obviously, you are free from this responsibility. If you are admitted, regular early action, again, it is non-binding. That means you have until May 1 to make your decision. With early action, there is some slight strategic benefit. The numbers are slightly different versus early decision. But colleges do genuinely like to see students who've shown interest and have shown intent in their college in the thought of matriculating at that school. So there is a slight advantage, but again, the application has to be in great shape in order to make this worthwhile.
So continuing on in our timeline here, we were just talking about the early November deadlines, early decision and early action. And now we'll move on to regular decision deadlines. So first, one outlier here is the University of California. They only offer one and only one decision plan. And their regular decision deadline is November 30th. And decisions are released usually by late March. For all other schools, their regular decision deadlines are typically in early January. And if a school doesn't offer early decision or early action, they definitely offer regular decision. This is the most common decision plan. Decisions are released in late March or early April if you apply RD. Similar to early action, regular decision is non-binding. And so again, you have until the May 1st national reply date to deposit at your one school of choice. What's tough about regular decision, especially for schools that do offer those early decision plan options, is that it's the most selective decision plan. It's later in the cycle. They've seen a number of other applicants before they're reviewing your application. And so it tends to be quite a bit tougher to gain admission, regular decision, if a school has already reviewed early decision and early action applications. And finally, the last decision plan option is called rolling admission. Rolling, as the name implies, it doesn't have a firm deadline until much later in the cycle. You can apply as early August for rolling admission if you have your application ready. Applications typically open in late summer. And admission officers review applications on a rolling basis as they come in, and typically release decisions 4 to 6 weeks after you apply, sometimes even sooner than that. The earlier you apply to a school rolling admission, the higher your chances of admission, since they are admitting students until they fill their class. Rolling is also non-binding.
As you are determining the best strategy and keeping track of different deadlines, it's important to note that sometimes application deadlines don't necessarily align with deadlines, internal college deadlines for other requirements. If you are going to be applying for some honors colleges, merit scholarships at that school, or even individual separate merit scholarships of any kind, some unique programs, whether you're doing, as we stated here, the accelerated BSMD program, or sometimes a specialized hybrid program within a college or university. And if you are considering submitting a portfolio, those might also have different deadlines from the application deadlines. So in keeping with our theme, keep working with your college counselor, make sure that you're gathering all of this information so that you're as prepared as possible and meeting all of your deadlines well before the actual application date for any of these programs.
So transitioning a little bit to application outcomes. So in other words, what potential news might you receive from each school you apply to based on which decision plan you apply for? The first and most exciting piece of news, of course, is being admitted. That is always a possibility, no matter the decision plan you select. Being deferred is another option for early rounds only, for both early decision round 1 and 2 or early action. What being deferred means is that the college is saying that they like you, but they need a little bit more time to make a final decision. And so they're pushing your application back to the regular decision round to be re-reviewed, ideally with some additional information added to your file at that time. More specifically, usually colleges want an updated set of grades from your first semester, since if you're applying early decision round 1 or early action, they would have only had your first quarter or progress report grades. So sending updated grades is really important if you're deferred. Colleges usually also care a lot about demonstrated interest. For those of you who may not know what demonstrated interest is, what that means is some colleges really care about your engagement with their school. In other words, have you visited their campus in person or virtually? Have you done an interview if that's an option? Have you sent an email to your admission officer to ask some thoughtful questions? All of those ways and more are opportunities to show your demonstrated interest. And if you're deferred, this is yet another moment in which colleges are hoping to get a sense from you about how excited you are to attend their school. So sending what's called a letter of continued interest is very common and encouraged if you are deferred. Sometimes universities also have a specific online form they might want you to complete. Unfortunately, if you are deferred, there's usually a lower chance of admission in regular decision. And once a college re-reviews your application, you could be admitted, of course. They might push your application back even further, unfortunately, to a wait list. That's more unlikely, but can happen once in a while, or you might receive a denied decision. Speaking of the wait list, that is an option, an outcome for regular decision only. That's kind of another version of defer. It's a college saying, we need a little bit more time to let you know about our final decision. The wait list only becomes active after the May 1st national reply date. And the reason for that is because by May 1st, colleges will know how full their incoming class is, because that's the deadline that everyone has to say yes or no to offers of admission. And so if a school has remaining, empty seats in their class, so to speak, after May 1st, that's when they would know whether or not they're going to turn to the wait list and offer some more students the opportunity to join their class. Again, if you're waitlisted, demonstrated interest is very important. And also of note, since the timing of this is a little bit tricky, if you're waitlisted at one school, you should absolutely deposit at a different school that you are admitted to prior to the May 1st deadline. That is super important to secure your spot somewhere. And you definitely do not want to roll the die and take the chance of holding out just to see if you get off of the wait list somewhere, since the chances of admission are pretty low and really change year to year just based on the space available in the incoming class. So you would deposit at your school of choice by May 1st, and then you wait. Throughout the summer, colleges will continue to update potential waitlist students by saying, yes, we're going to go to the waitlist this year, or no, we're not, or just continue to update you once they have more information. The final outcome is a denied decision. This is a final decision from a college. There is not the opportunity to reapply in the same admission cycle. And do not despair, if you're denied from a college or multiple colleges on your list, it's not a reflection of your potential to succeed in college, especially for highly selective institutions. They usually deny many, many more students than they actually admit. And so it's truly not a reflection of your potential in the future.
So this is just a graphic to help kind of guide, illustrate a little better what we were describing in terms of the deadlines. So early decision 1, early action deadlines usually fall between November 1st and 15th. Early decision 1 is usually released between about December 15th and December 20th, right around there. So you do get that information early. Early decision 2 and regular decision, the deadlines are usually between January 1st and 15th. Early action decisions are usually released in February. Early decision 2 is usually released pretty close following that, towards the latter end of February. And regular decision comes out usually mid-March through early April, as Erika said, allowing you a couple of weeks to do admitted student events, whether they're virtual or in person, to really look at your choices and make your final determination and put down your deposit by May 1st.
And one thing that I hope is helpful for those visual folks out there like myself, just seeing this timeline laid out like this, is as we begin to think about strategy, especially regarding early decision, I get the question often about, okay, how can I apply both early decision round 1 and early decision round 2 if they're both binding decision plans? How does that work? And as you can see by the timeline, you would hear back from your early decision round 1 school by mid-December. And that's 2 weeks or more before the early decision round 2 and regular decision deadlines. And so you have a short window of time, at least 2 weeks to reflect on the news that you've gotten from early decision round 1. Hopefully you're celebrating ED1 and you're, done with if you've been admitted, you are not applying to any more schools since you know where you're attending. But if you were deferred or denied from your ED1 option, then you are putting the final touches on your ED2 and regular decision schools in preparation for January. And to highlight some of the themes that we were talking about regarding the difference in acceptance rate between the decision plans, we have some decision plans by the numbers here just to illustrate that point. So as you can see with these examples, Harvard, for instance, their restrictive early action plan admits 14% of those who apply, compared to in regular decision that falls very low to about 3%. For Northeastern, they don't release specific early decision round 1 versus early decision round 2 data. They combine that to say they admit about 50% of those who apply. The reason why I kind of make that distinction that it's a combined statistic is because, as noted earlier, early decision round 1 and early decision round 2 are not considered equal. Early decision round 1 is typically kinder, less selective compared to early decision round 2. Northeastern has early action. They actually don't release the data of acceptance rates for that, but we know for regular decision, it falls their acceptance rate to 18%. And BU and Colorado College, you can see similar trends where the early plans are kinder to students, and the later you wait to apply, come regular decision, it becomes much more selective. When thinking about these decision plan options, we also wanted to highlight why balancing your college list overall is really key as you begin to think about strategy. Because you will be strategically making decisions about each individual schools, especially when it comes to decision plans. If it's a top school, is it an early decision contender? If they offer early action, are you going to take advantage of that? But also, as you think about your list as a whole, it's important to make sure that you are ensuring that you have lots of great options that you're excited about at the end of your process. And if you are applying to many schools that are highly, highly selective, you want to make sure that you balance those out with some that aren't quite as selective, that are more in your target or likely range, to ensure that you hear some good news, from colleges, and just have a higher likelihood of hearing that good news from schools. Depending on your specific academic credentials, a particular school might fall in a different range for you. For the far reach range, those are typically highly selective institutions, and the chances of acceptance are very slim. And so that's why you want to only apply to 1, maybe 2 schools in your far reach range. Schools in your reach range, again, depending on what your credentials are typically those where they're still highly selective and a little bit, you're stretching, you're reaching for those, but they're much more attainable than the far reach. A reach school is typically one that you would consider for early decision if you were thinking strategically. Target schools, as the name implies, you're right on target based on the type of student that a college is really looking for academically. And likely schools, you're feeling pretty confident that you're going to get good news from a likely school. Shooting your shot has downsides. I talk about this a lot with students, especially those who are wanting to really load up their list with far reach and reach schools. Primarily, it first and foremost takes a lot of time and effort to apply to these schools. And I know it's a really busy time of the school year right now where it's super important to keep up your grades if you're a senior, at least, in applying this cycle. And so if you're really loading up those far reach and reach schools and it's taking up a lot of your time to write things like essays, I would encourage you to be as intentional as possible about which schools in that far reach and reach range you're applying for, especially if you're feeling like it's taking away from important time spent on your schoolwork. Because since chances are lower of being admitted, especially to the far reach schools, definitely spend your time wisely. Also, it is never fun hearing a no decision, a deny decision. I hear students oftentimes say, "Oh, I'm mentally prepared for it. It's okay if I get denied from, all these schools. I'm okay with that." But it still isn't great. It's never fun to hear a no decision. And I see all the time just a student who was, seeming okay with reaching, come the end of their process, they're feeling if they, were reaching a little too far, then just feeling a little disappointed, and I think that's inevitable. What's also really important to note about this do your research bullet point here, as you're deciding on the final schools on your college list, definitely the more you like about a college, the more you've looked into it and genuinely would be excited to be a student there, the more likely you will be to really thrive as a member of their community, regardless of like how selective it is or what their ranking is, because competitiveness and ranking, it only tells the tiniest sliver of the story of what your experience would really look like there. So definitely spend time thinking about your fit for each school on your list. As you're doing so, ask yourselves the questions of, do they have the academic programs you're really looking for? And do they kind of check your boxes in other ways that are important to you?
We get the question, obviously, understandably, what strategy do I use? How do I know which application deadline is the right one for me? And in terms of how to understand and differentiate between them, we're just going to break it down a little bit. As Erika stated earlier, ED1, you are applying before they have seen any other applicant. What that means is that they have fresh eyes, a little more enthusiasm and stamina to read through a lot of different applications. They are aware that your early decision application signifies an intent, an interest in that institution, which engenders a very positive reaction generally. And it can make for a lot of certainty between the student and the institution. However, that is going to depend on whether you are in fact admissible. Admission officers are always reading applications with an eye to, can I admit this student? They are always looking for the hooks, the things that make that student and that individual stand out and really shine in the process. And so the question from students, I know this school is out of reach for me, so shouldn't I use my early decision one choice on this school that is not really going to be feasible for me in regular decision? Unfortunately, strategically, it's not always the right choice to make. Loving a school enough to put in an early decision application to an institution that is already a reach or a far reach for you is not likely to persuade them to grant you an acceptance. It is understood that you love that school, and it is, I think, as Erika said, and we will say to you endlessly, not a reflection of your talent, of your intelligence, of your hard work, and the special qualities that make you uniquely you. It is merely a reflection of the fact they are getting numerous applicants at a certain academic threshold, and you may not be meeting that academic threshold. So it's really important in orchestrating your early decision strategy, and this is for early decision 1 and 2, to make sure that you are really well academically aligned for that school of choice, that it makes it an easy decision for them to say, yes, we see this student here. This student is eminently qualified, will thrive here, and we are rewarding that with an admission. Often what students do is they will determine what school is going to be their early decision 1 school, and then perhaps choose a second school, one that they also love. They also could possibly see themselves attending and being very happy to go to as their early decision 2 option in case early decision 1 yields a deny or a defer. So early decision 2, it's also a strategic choice. It is also binding. You have to be absolutely sure it's a school you really want to go to. And I think it's really important to keep asking yourself, just verifying your belief, your understanding that your early decision 2 and even your early decision 1 school is the school you would choose above all others on your list. It is, as our slide says, with early decision 2, your last opportunity. Early decision 1 did not yield the outcome you wanted. Time to refresh and rethink the strategy, which hopefully you've already put in place with your college advisor before those decisions come back. But it does really require you to be very confident that your early decision 2 school is then ultimately that school of choice.
Thinking back to the timeline of everything too, one point I wanted to emphasize was this opportunity that you have to reflect on the feedback you've already received from not just your early decision round 1 school, but also any potential early action schools that have released decisions in late December prior to the early January ED2 deadline. Because especially if your ED1 school, let's just say your ED1 school accepted 30% of those who applied in early decision. If for your early decision round 2 school, you probably want to, take a half step back in terms of selectivity and choose a school that isn't quite that selective in early decision, because you've heard this feedback from your early decision 1 school that you haven't quite met that academic threshold that Lauren was just describing. And so you have, as I said, this really great opportunity to take whatever feedback you've received already and really reflect on, okay, if I haven't heard good news from a school or multiple schools kind of in this selectivity range, what about this selectivity range for early decision round 2? And also just thinking about regular decision, but especially for this last opportunity to play your early decision chip, if you will, as wisely as you can. That's, I think, a really helpful strategic way to think about your selection. There are also some other factors kind of hidden behind the scenes when it comes to early decision. As said here, early decision data may not always be exactly what it seems. That statistic of how many students are admitted early decision, there's a lot of context behind that. Oftentimes, athletes apply early decision as encouraged by the coach that is actively recruiting them. So that inflates the acceptance rate a little bit. And with development cases and also legacy students, those are also cohorts that are encouraged to apply early decision, oftentimes further kind of inflating the acceptance rate. Overall, too, as Lauren and I have noted, even though you should be as wise and strategic, in thinking about early decision as possible, statistics should never outweigh your genuine interest in a college. Above all else, even though you're using your head to think through this decision, you have to love the school that you are getting down on one knee and proposing to, since it is that binding decision in early decision. Also, I think it's super important to say that there's a lot of pressure out there these days about early decision. I think a lot of chatter about, okay, what's your ED school? What's your ED2 school? And the reason for that, I think, is because, people recognize that there's some strategy to applying early decision and taking advantage of that slightly kinder acceptance rate, but it's not always the best option for students. In particular, if you're looking at your college list and there's not one school that you're saying to yourself, yeah, this is my top 1 or top 2 or top 3 school, and if you just want to keep your options open without entering into this binding decision plan, early decision probably isn't the best fit for you. Also, if you feel like you need some more time, especially for ED1, to improve your Academics, as we noted earlier, you would send your first semester grades for later decision plans versus just your quarter one or progress report grades for ED1. Or if you're taking the SAT or ACT another time and are really thinking that if you get a higher score, that'll be really helpful to you, then you might want to forego ED1 and wait till a later decision plan. So there's lots of nuance to this, and definitely, as we've said before, speak with your college advisor to really think as thoughtfully as you can about whether or not early decision is a good option for you.
I think as we are talking this through, and Erika was saying there's, a lot of pressure, we all feel that, of what is your early decision school? And I think a lot about all the background noise in this process and how it can be very easy to be really consumed with what should I be doing and what is everyone else doing. And one of the things that's really crucially important to us at Logic Prep is really helping each and every student feel that they are developing the plan that is the best fit for them personally. And it may not look like anyone else's. Your college list may not look like anyone else's. I know when I worked in a high school as the director of college counseling, there were 400 kids and they all applied to the same 40 schools year after year after year. In the US alone, there are almost 4,000 colleges and universities. So whether it's the schools on your list or the strategy with which you are applying to those schools, your path may not look like someone else's, and that's okay. It has to be the right path for you. And that's something that we really want to help you discover through this process. It's really important to think through the list, to think through what your goals are, to think through what the outcome is, not just in terms of admission decisions, but in terms of the academic path and experience you want to have. This is, as we know, a rapidly changing landscape with the Supreme Court affirmative action decision and now pushback on legacy admissions. It's hard to know exactly how this is going to shape the application outcomes and statistics going forward. So it's something, of course, we're keeping an eye on, but it makes it even more crucially important that you really personalize and tailor your individual process to suit what your specific needs are, and that we help you identify that. In this process, no matter how organized you are, there are components that are going to feel overwhelming. It is hard to know what the internal admission mandates are, what is happening in the mind of the reader of any of your applications at any of the schools you apply to. That is something that you can't ultimately control. What we want is for you to feel, as you press that submit button, that you have done everything you can in the application itself, in the 4 years leading up to that application, to create the strongest possible presentation of yourself, that you can know whether you are admitted or whether you are denied or waitlisted or deferred, that you've done all you can to represent yourself in the best possible light. There are endless stories of people, famous, well-known, world-changing individuals who have gone to schools I promise you have never heard of. It's really important to keep in mind that the name of the college you attend is not going to shape your destiny. It says nothing about your worth or your value, and that the most important thing is to focus on what is going to be fulfilling, intellectually exciting, and is going to be the right fit for you to expand your horizons in college and beyond. I think Olivia is going to start taking some questions that Eric and I are going to be happy to answer for you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I feel like that was such a helpful presentation for us to have, and I'm really excited to answer some questions. So if any of you have been thinking about questions throughout this presentation, please go ahead and put them in the Q&A. The button for it should be at the bottom of your screen. To start off with, I think we'll actually approach a few of our questions that were sent in ahead of time when you all registered, just so that we can make sure we get to some of those ideas that you all had before coming to the presentation. So one of the questions that I think a lot of people are probably wondering is really understanding more about how the Supreme Court decision might impact ED outcomes either this year or in the future, and how it might also impact legacy admits. And I know you guys talked about that a little bit already, but is there any additional advice that you can kind of offer students who are concerned about how this might affect their chances in early decision this year or in coming years?
I think it's important to know, and I know I already said this, and I will say again, that colleges absolutely are looking to learn about you, to find reasons to include you in the entering class. Colleges are deeply committed to diversity, whether it's cultural, ethnic, language, experience, academics, geographical. They want to capture a very dynamic and diverse group of students representing a wealth of different backgrounds and experiences on the college campus. There are ways that we can help the colleges understand really important personal things about you that span beyond checking a box on the application. One thing to keep in mind, even going back further in the process, for those of you who are doing standardized testing, all the testing services, as far as I know at this point, still give you the option to identify an ethnic identity in as you're filling out the registration information. The benefit in doing that is that colleges buy testing data from, buy demographic data from the testing services. That's why after you've taken an ACT or an SAT, you start getting buckets of mail every day, whether it's email or paper mail from colleges you've never heard of before. So self-identifying in that way is one way to allow the colleges to get information about you, perhaps then inviting you to fly-in weekends or special events that will help you get to better know that college and how you might be a good fit for that campus. This is where the narrative, the personality of the application becomes very important. And we want this for all of our students, whether students are identifying in a certain way or not. We want a student's individuality, their personal story, their self-identifiers to come through in every aspect of the application, whether it's the extracurricular activities, whether it's the main Common App essay that you're working on, whether it's the supplemental essays. There are lots of ways to tell stories, and we want to capture that really personal information in the application to help colleges understand what differentiates you in this process. Erika, do you want to take on the legacy question or say more about the diversity initiatives?
On the note of legacy, that's one point that is still in very early stages. It just kind of came out where there's been a challenge to the practice of legacy admission after the Supreme Court ruled on affirmative action. So this is very new, not a lot of information to share yet. Aside from how there have been a couple universities who have publicly announced that they will no longer consider legacy as a factor in their application review. So again, speak with your college advisor to understand, if the schools on your list, if you are, a legacy student applying to a college or university that a parent or a sibling or a grandparent has attended, to understand, if that will be kind of a plus factor for you or if it won't be considered.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful. Thank you both. A new person actually just asked about a question that is very similar to something that we got on our registration as well, asking about how do you know which schools use which decision plans? You've offered a few examples, but is there a comprehensive place where people can go to find this information? How do you know what's out there and what the deadlines are?
Oh, such a good question. I think there is a perverse reason that all of this information is different at every school. It would be really wonderful if there was just a simple way to gather all of this information. One of the easiest and most straightforward ways as you are researching colleges, looking at college websites, is that on the admission tab of every college website, they will list what their application options are and what those deadlines are. On our Logic Prep dashboard, we also have that information, so you can kind of keep your colleges stored easily in one place and see what the admission options are. And also on the Common Application, as you're going through, it will, as you are kind of building your My Colleges page. And for those of you who have not yet experienced the Common Application, don't worry about it, you will get there, but you will find that that's a way also to gather all of that information in one place. We try to help students by creating spreadsheets and kind of gathering all of this information, but I will say that it can be confusing and hard to keep track of. So if you're feeling a little confused and overwhelmed, I understand why.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. We'll go ahead and mark that one as complete. So another question that we had from the registration was really talking about, and again, this is something that you guys kind of talked about in the presentation as well, but how challenging should your early decision or early action school be? And I'm wondering if you can offer some specific strategies that students can look at to better understand where a school falls for them. Is it a far reach? Is it a reach? Is it a target? So is it the type of early decision or early action school where that could move the needle, or is it too much? And maybe identifying some additional strategies that students can use to figure that out.
Yeah, so beyond the wisdom from your college advisor in talking through which expected range from far reach to likely a school might fall on your list, there are definitely some data points that you can use as well to just gather information about the selectivity of that school and the type of student academically that school is looking for. Most universities will release, for instance, what's called the middle 50% data. Middle 50% data is referring to the standardized test score ranges for both the SAT and the ACT, and what that middle 50% looks like for admitted students. So what's, as they look at the admitted student class, what's just that middle range? And so you can, if you have testing and are considering sending a standardized test score to colleges on your list, you can use that middle 50% range to gauge, okay, where does my score fall in this range? Am I above the middle 50%, in it, or below? If you are in the middle 50%, or especially above the middle 50%, that's a good sign that, your test score, again, if that is something that you're using to send to colleges, will be kind of in the range or above the range of a typical admitted student. And so that's one kind of encouraging factor for you to know, okay, I'm in the range, or I'm above the range, and that can tie into whether a school is in your kind of target zone or a likely zone, or if it's a far reach, if you're not as close to that middle 50% range. Also, oftentimes schools will release an overview of academic data. For instance, each year colleges release all the data, so much data that you could review. But one factor of that is if a student was in like the top 10% of their graduating class or top 5% of their graduating class. So again, if your school, if you have that information, if you know your class rank or thereabouts, you can use that as a gauge as well to know, okay, if a school admits 95% of those who are in the top 10% of their class, and I'm in the top 10% of my class, that's an encouraging sign as well. So those are just a couple ways, in addition to, of course, acceptance rate. With acceptance rate, schools that admit fewer than 25 or 30% of applicants are oftentimes considered highly selective institutions and usually would fall in a student's reach or far reach range, especially if they admit fewer than 10% of those who apply. I typically, again, this depends on your academic credentials, but for a likely school to truly be, a high chance of admission, at least admitting, 60% of those who apply puts you in a comfortable zone, I think, for a likely school. But again, that kind of depends on your personal qualities.
And
Lauren, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, understandably, we get the question a lot from students and probably more honestly from parents, like my kid is very special, or I've done a lot of community service, or I'm really committed to government, or what about these things that make me special? And those are absolutely special things, and the colleges are taking note. However, unfortunately, the first thing that colleges look at in determining admissibility is the academics. They are looking at the rigor of the curriculum, and they are looking at your success within that curriculum, and they are comparing it to what they typically see and what they want to see in their admitted and matriculated students. So your special qualities, your accomplishments, your talents, all of the things that make you unique and wonderful are absolutely impactful, but are not likely in an early decision application to overwhelm a poorer academic standard than what that college is typically looking for in their admitted students. So for those of you who are wondering, this is a far reach, but I've done so much, that's great. And it could potentially make a difference, but it is much more likely to make a difference at a school that you are a slightly better academic fit for in their admission profile.
Yeah, I think that all makes a ton of sense. Thank you guys for sharing so much about that. Another question that we got that I think would be helpful to talk about is if you are debating between, two different potential early decision schools and you feel really stuck and can't figure out what to do, what advice do you guys have for the student that really can't pick? Do you pick one of them? What do you base that decision on? Do you pick neither of them? What do you recommend?
That's definitely so hard, and you're not alone. If you haven't already made a pros and cons list, and talked to current students there and, done all the homework that you can, I think that's, first and foremost, if you've done all those things, something that can be helpful, I feel like, is trying on that school for a day or a week, saying, okay, today I'm going to think to myself that I'm applying early decision to this school. See how that feels. Are you excited about that? Are you comfortable with that? Does that just make you excited, or does it make you feel hesitant? You're like, oh, this doesn't feel right to me. And, the next day or the next week, try on the other school that you're considering and see if that elicits a similar reaction from you or a different reaction. I think just, mentally kind of tricking yourself in a way to thinking that you've made a decision either way can help you reflect on if you're excited about that, fake decision, or if you maybe want to make the other decision. So that's one thing I've seen be helpful.
And I would just follow up and if there's, I know it's a luxury for many, but if you're anywhere near physically the two schools and are able to get back for a quick visit to both of them, give them both another kind of do the same things at both, walk through the student center, eat a meal in the dining hall, talk to students on campus, visit a class. Colleges, as far as I'm concerned, one of the only upsides to COVID is that colleges have become very savvy with online visits transit resources. So if it's not feasible to get to campus, as Erika said, they always have, talk to a current student, do a virtual information session. There are lots of ways to get information and, more knowledge. And I would say kind of trust your gut, just as Erika is saying that, you might think intellectually, oh, this makes sense, but it doesn't feel right, and pay some tribute to that. I would say you also might then be a good candidate for what Erika had referenced earlier, that for some students, early decision is not a great choice, that you love too many schools. And in that case, do you want to circumvent some of the possibilities that might come for you if you left that option a little bit more open?
Awesome. I totally agree. I will say, kind of similar to Erika's point too, another thing that I like to do with students sometimes is do the like flipping a coin kind of thing, because sometimes that little gut reaction that you get the moment the coin drops can really tell you a lot about, were you actually hoping it would be the other one, and maybe you weren't sure until that moment. So we've used some of those tricks to help students get past that mental block. But yeah, early decision is not the right choice for every student. And sometimes it's better to give yourself those options and keep your options open throughout the year, which is great. I have not seen any other new questions. Sorry, Erika, did you want to say something else?
I thought of just one other note about just timing of early decision, early action release dates. Sometimes I have seen if a student's come November not prepared to apply somewhere early decision round 1, but they are sending out some early action notifications that are, especially those that are released in mid to late December. Sometimes they'll see what news they hear back from those early action schools. And if they are excited about that news, they might not decide to apply early decision round 2 and continue to apply non-binding to all their schools. But if they hear back some news from top early decision candidates that isn't so great, that sometimes can influence an ED2 decision at least, to help a student say to themselves, okay, I haven't gotten great news back yet from early action. Maybe I want to take advantage of this second early decision potential in ED2. So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, that's really smart. I've seen that with some of my students as well. All right, we are about at the end of the hour, which I think is perfect. We've run out of questions. I am putting the link to our survey in the chat here. So if any of you are able to take a moment to fill that out, it's super fast. It should not take you longer than 60 seconds. It really helps us to know, are you enjoying what we're doing with our presentations? Is there other topics or ideas you'd like to see us talk about? And just give us some feedback on how we're doing. So thank you so much to Lauren and Erika. It was awesome to hear you guys really demystify this process for everyone and give us an opportunity to talk frankly about what this looks like for our students and families. And thank you to all of you that joined us tonight. We're so happy to have you here. And please follow up with us if you have additional questions. I will be sending out a link to the recording at some point tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. And it will be available on our website at logicprep.com/LP events, starting tomorrow as well. You can find that and our many other webinars on that webpage as well. So thank you all so much. It was great to see you all here, and hope you have a great rest of your evening.